Phone hacking, private investigators, intercepted voicemails. The Duke of Sussex has taken the stand in his most public battle against the press yet, blaming the newspapers for inciting hatred and harassment in his private life. No cameras, no recordings are allowed in court, but we'll bring you the highlights of the evidence played by an actor. This is Prince Harry in Court, a Sky News special.
How are you feeling, Prince Harry?
The Duke of Sussex is fighting Fleet Street.
Prince Harry's action against the Daily Mirror is underway.
The events surrounding his mother's death presents the media.
Bringing damages claims against the Mirror Group.
We've heard how alleged hacking engulfed his whole life.
Harry's court papers make huge allegations.
This is Prince Harry versus the papers, round 3.
Good evening, I'm Jonathan Samuels, and today Prince Harry appeared in court to give evidence, becoming the first senior royal to take to the witness box since the 1890s. The Prince was subject to tough cross-examination, at times heated, but mostly the Duke appeared calm and serious, saying that thousands of incredibly invasive articles affected his life and that of the people around him. The royal arrived at the Royal Courts of Justice today for the most anticipated court case in recent times, surrounded by media from around the world. Throughout this hour-long programme, we'll bring you the best bits of the testimony and the cross-examination played by an actor. It is the closest account you will see of what happened in court. We're joined tonight by Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck, and Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror and former deputy editor of the Daily Mirror and a media commentator. Great to see you both this evening. We shall chat in a moment. So it has been, hasn't it, a truly historic day. A senior member of the royal family walked into court to give testimony for the first time in more than 130 years. Let's get straight into what we heard when the Duke of Sussex took the stand and the oath.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Well, that is our actor who will be voicing moments of the Prince's evidence in court throughout tonight's programme. Let's bring in our guests, it is great to get your thoughts and your analysis on what happened on what has been a fascinating day. And Paul, what a moment. Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see a member of the royal family walk into the High Court and stand and give the oath?
In a word, no. It's quite extraordinary. It's not just high drama, it's sort of like a royal soap opera. I mean, it really is quite extraordinary.
You were in court today.
Yes.
I'd love to know what the atmosphere was like. And also tell me about that opening statement by the lawyer who was cross-examining Harry, because he began, rather unexpectedly, with an apology.
Yes, the atmosphere outside court, very busy, lots of press, busy inside court as well, a full court, full overspill room of journalists. And that opening statement by Harry, the first question he's asked on that oath, which he's just given, is this case really about these 33 articles and the Mirror Group, or is it just about the press intrusion which you say you've suffered for your whole entire life? And the Mirror Group barrister apologises at that stage and says, and for that, on behalf of the press, I'm very sorry for everything that you've suffered, and if at any point during this process you want to just take a moment because of it, then feel free to. So it was a sort of dramatic start to what the rest of the day had in store.
But in a sense, wasn't that the only option for the Mirror Group lawyers, in as far as the company has paid out £100 million in compensation to phone hacking and other intrusive methodology, that getting that in first was a good tactic?
Oh, well, you sound quite like Harry now, saying, well, because they've done it once, they must have done it again. And that was a theme we kept on seeing coming through today.
Yeah. OK, well, we'll chat more in a moment, but I just want to bring in our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock. Laura has been at court all day. Evening, Laura. Harry has wanted this moment for years, hasn't he? How would you sum up today's remarkable events?
Extraordinary, historic day. We have had a senior royal, the son of the king, testifying at the High Court. This doesn't happen. This isn't what members of the royal family do. It hasn't happened in living memory. Now, Harry's legal team are very happy, they say, with how it all went today. They would say that, of course, but I think it does show there were real worries about how he was going to cope under the pressure of quick-fire cross-examination. Now, if the Mirror Group barrister had hoped to goad him today, it didn't work. Harry seemed calm, he seemed controlled throughout, but it certainly wasn't an easy ride for him. He was asked direct, difficult questions about all these articles, asked to prove how it was that these articles came about because of illegal activities like phone hacking and blagging. It was really intense in court. But let's not forget, this is exactly what Harry wanted. He wanted it all said, he wanted it all heard in open court today, because he has this greater purpose, this bigger mission. He wants to expose what went on and to hold those responsible to account. This is only the beginning. His witness statement, I thought, read like a manifesto to all of this. He says in it he had a front row seat when it came to hacking. He wants to expose it, and he believes we will all be better off as a result of this. Now, we are one day in, one day done. No big mistakes, no big gaffes. His team think it went well, but there is still tomorrow and still more cross-examination to come.
Indeed. Laura, thank you very much. Well, as we have been hearing, Prince Harry was cross-examined for much of the day today, and throughout this hour-long special, we will keep bringing you the drama from the High Court, delivered by our actor. Once the formalities were completed, the cross-examination of Prince Harry began. Representing Mirror Group newspapers, Andrew Green-Casey pressed the Duke of Sussex on his memory of some of the oldest articles included in his case. The Duke was asked how an article he didn't read or have any recollection of could have caused him distress. And again, with the help of our actor, here's how Harry responded.
Compared to now and 1996, I was a child. I was at school. These articles were incredibly invasive, and each time one of these articles were written, it had an effect on my life. The people around me, my mother in this case, her reaction to me as her son.
Well, Mr Green continued to drill down on the Duke's memory of articles that in some cases are now more than 2 decades old. Prince Harry described the impact the newspaper articles had had on his life.
When I say the contents, I believe that, again, as a child, every single one of these articles played an important role, a destructive role in my growing up. To give any confirmation that I can specifically remember reading the articles at the time, I believe would be speculation. Yes, as you said, more than thousands, maybe millions of articles have been written about me since age 12. Yes, because again, because it's 20 years ago, I simply cannot speculate how it was and whether I saw these articles at the time. I certainly saw lots of articles at the time. The ones I was made aware of because of the behaviour and reaction of people in my inner circle. Unfortunately, stories that I've only shared with 1 or 2 people within my inner circle ends up front page of newspaper or any page. Your circle of friends starts to shrink and diminish rather rapidly.
Persephone, it's been a continuing line of attack, hasn't it, all day today? If Harry hadn't read the articles at the time, how can he now be distressed by them? What's the thinking here?
Well, that was the forensic analysis which the Mirror's barrister was taking Harry through today on an article-by-article basis, and it sounds rather more sensationalist when you read it in the press today than it was in court, because it was a really forensic line of questioning about whether or not there were the possibility of any other sources for these articles. Had the information in the articles been published elsewhere already? And what he was saying essentially was it this article for which there was unlawful information gathering, and was it this article which caused you the distress, or was it the general press intrusion which was happening at the time?
Yeah, what did you make of that, Paul?
I agree. Interestingly, I've been talking to a couple of well-connected contacts, one in the royal family, or close to the royal family, and one close to the Mirror Group. In the Mirror Group's case, this morning, it's like a cricket match, that was the analogy used. This morning, they weren't very happy. They expected Andrew Green, who's known as the Beast for his forensic cross-examination skills, they thought Prince Harry had remarkably stood up as better than they expected. But as the day went on, it's a bit like a cricket match after lunch. In fact, Andrew Green was bowling some pretty hostile bouncers that Prince Andrew was finding it more difficult to actually fend off. And I would anticipate tomorrow morning the bowling will become even fiercer. But a royal contact said that what was really going to shock and surprise King Charles, who is, funnily enough, of course, at his cottage in Transylvania, the land of Vlad the Impaler, was the reference to politics hitting rock bottom, which was, throwing that in was, I think, was a surprise. And as someone said, it was a bit like Prince Harry is trying to impale both the royal family and the media at the same time.
I think the other thing that really came across, certainly in the first few hours, is how young Harry was when a lot of these articles came out. He was 11, 12 years old, and of course so impressionable.
Yeah, it's a really long time ago to be remembering and trying to recall these facts and which articles you read and what did cause the distress which you're saying was caused. That's genuinely a difficult call.
Yeah, hard to remember that far back, of course. OK, well, we have heard some of the evidence there, and I just want to take you back a little bit. Let's rewind. The moment he was sworn in today, the court released his witness statement. Here it is. It's more than 50 pages long. It's all written in the Prince's words. And here's a little bit of what Prince Harry said about the tabloids in this statement. They then start to edge you towards playing the role or roles that suit them best and which sells as many newspapers as possible, especially if you are the spare to the heir. You're then either the playboy prince, the failure, the dropout, or in my case, the thicko, the cheat, the underage drinker, irresponsible drug taker. The list goes on. As a teenager and in my early 20s, I ended up feeling as though I was playing up to a lot of the headlines and stereotypes that they wanted to pin on me. And in the witness statement, the Duke of Sussex accused the tabloid press of having blood-stained hands, something Harry was asked about in court. The lawyer said, who has blood on their hands?
Some of the editors and journalists who are responsible for causing a lot of pain, upset, in some cases, maybe inadvertently, death.
Yeah, really powerful, that, Paul, wasn't it?
Really powerful. I did find it a little hard, though, when Prince Harry was trying to suggest that the media were determined to break up his relationships with girlfriends. I just can't see that. The media obviously intrigued, fascinated, and arguably certainly have exceeded proper conduct at times, but they weren't setting out to destroy his relationships. There was huge interest in him among the media, arguably too much, among the public. So I found that a little desperate to say the media wanted to destroy his relationship, somehow wreck his life. Because if you look back, there have been many positive stories. The hero soldier, Prince Harry. In fact, so it swings both ways. It's not all the media monstering Harry almost from birth, is the way he put it in one sentence in his statement. They were, from the day I was born. Well, I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah, it also goes back to whether or not he has a vendetta against the prince. It's not a word that he uses, is it? But of course, many people are wondering if that is what this is all about.
Well, it very much goes to the rhetoric of the start of the witness statement, which is where the Mirror Group's barrister got that question from. Is this really about these 33 articles, or is it actually just about this fairly awful experience that you've had at the hands of the press over many, many years? And when we say press, we don't just mean Mirror Group. We mean tabloid press as a whole.
Yeah, and of course the Mirror Group have admitted one case wrongdoing, haven't they?
They have, but it's in the instance of a rogue journalist rather than what Harry's seeking to portray, which is that this is a campaign which is being sort of authorised by the top and trickled down across the group.
you've been a newspaper hack, Paul. You've edited newspapers. When we see these headlines from 20 years ago or so, some of them feel really old-fashioned. They feel like the sort of stories that even the tabloid press wouldn't necessarily cover today. Is that fair?
I think that's true. I think the climate has changed. Harry would argue, I'm sure, that it hasn't changed enough, but that's where he's coming from. I think things have changed for the better, and Harry seems determined to almost provoke Leveson 2 being revived, which I don't think any government is going to do, not the present government. And I don't think Keir Starmer, if he wins the next election, would make that a priority at all. But that's the way Harry sees it. But we've also got to be careful here that this case doesn't damage the fact we do need a free press in this country. And without doubt, there's been a lot of bad behaviour and illegality. But the importance of a free press is still precious.
Yeah, we'll perhaps talk a bit more about that later on in the programme. I want to discuss now Prince Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy. It's already been a big part of this trial, hasn't it? Well, a number of the articles within the Prince's case against MGN focus on the couple's time together. This article by the Mirror's royal reporter, Jane Kerr, and published around 2004, claimed Harry had been introduced to Miss Davy's father days before the businessman was accused of making a profit from Africa's trophy hunting trade. Well, first of all, Prince Harry expressed his concerns about the way the information was gathered to get that story.
The paragraph that says Harry will fly back to Britain on December 19th. Not only is that a security issue, I can't begin to imagine how they would find that information out without blagging. Now, flight blagging could have been done through phone hacking. Either way, I'm not entirely sure how these journalists, one of those being Jane Kerr, how they would ever know what date I'm flying. And having the confidence to put that in a national newspapers, advertising my travel plans.
Yeah, it goes back to that paranoia, doesn't it, that he said that he felt for much of his life as he was being chased by the tabloid press.
And this is what people have been in the press today calling the smoking gun of today. This is really probably the only article on which there's no real other explanation as to how that information could have been found out, and no other publishers, as I understand it, had published it. So it's really the one article, I think, that's going to cause concern for the defendants' team off the back of today.
Yeah, because another line of attack, which has been running throughout the day, is the fact that the information in many of the articles that he's brought actually did appear in other newspapers. It appeared on the BBC, even on Press Association, in the hours or even sometimes the days before the Mirror published.
It's a mixed bag, in fact. You know, we were talking earlier. In fact, it seems strange. Some of these stories they're citing don't seem to be. Why are they in there? Why didn't they actually reduce it down to the more blatant? It seems to me, not as a lawyer but as a journalist, it seems to me that he has a stronger case on blagging, perhaps, than on phone hacking, and they also seem to be relying on trying to tie up, whether successful or not, they're trying to tie up the fact that many of the journalists whose bylines are on certain stories were named in the 2003 Operation Motorman inquiry by the Information Commissioner's office, and they're trying to say, well, if they were found to be blagging then, they must have been blagging to get these stories. It's almost guilt by association. It's the tactic.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed that a bit yesterday, didn't we, that this case is built on inference. And Harry said a number of times today, well, this is the same Mirror group that are guilty of hacking. It's been found out that these journalists have done this previously, they've blagged, they've hacked, and so they must be doing it again. But it's that leap. He's got to persuade the judge that just because of this circumstantial evidence, there's enough for him to persuade the court on the balance of probabilities that it did take place.
Because there is a lack of phone data, as we've heard.
And Harry didn't seem particularly across that data. There were a number of times when he said, oh, you know, my lawyers have the evidence, or they showed me something, and he didn't particularly seem across the detail of the underlying documents today.
Yeah, I mean, how much of this is about persuading the judge. The judge has got to weigh everything up, and it's a balance, isn't it?
And it is just on the balance of probabilities, and I don't want to diminish that, but it's a significantly lower threshold than you would have in a criminal case, for example. And it's the balance of probabilities 50-50. Was it more likely than not? So he may get there on a number of the articles.
Yes, when you're looking at the social media feed, a lot of the public don't quite see it in the way the law is acting. They think it's either guilty or innocent. It could be a nuanced judgment. The judge could decide that of the 33, 5 stand up to, in his view, supporting Harry's case. 28 might not, but I think Harry would and his team would see it as a victory if they even secure one, because he's fighting this in the court of public opinion, not just in the law court.
Well, you can see the headline, can't you? Harry hacked by Mirror Group. If there's even one article that he wins on.
Yeah, that's a good point. OK, well, let's go back to the cross-examination, because a little bit later, Andrew Green, the lawyer for the Mirror, pushed the Prince on why he thought the article was distressing and whether Harry had read it at the time. Now, I'm going to help with the interaction here and explain what the lawyer said in court.
That's an assumption I may have done.
You don't know, replied the barrister.
I don't know. So long ago.
When do you think you first read this article?
I can't say.
And what is so distressing about it?
It's as distressing reading and looking at it now as the first time I saw it.
Mr. Green repeats, and what is so distressing about it?
A level of detail, relationship between myself and my girlfriend, my travel plans being broadcast to a huge audience.
Are you equally distressed about contents of articles in the Daily Express, Mail on Sunday and The Sun?
Yes.
Yeah, Persephone, what did you make of that admission where he said, yes, other papers as well were equally distressing?
It's difficult for him. He's got to show that these articles that we're discussing in this case are the ones that cause the distress which he's claiming for. And he's now bringing in, as he has actually in the witness statement as well, a lot of other publishers into the mix.
This is causation, isn't it, that you were talking about?
Back to the causation point, yes.
Yeah. Paul?
No, I agree. Although I'm no cheerleader for Harry, as you know, but I'm not sure, though, I would necessarily know now how I might have reacted to situations in my own life 30 years ago, for example. So I think I'm not quite sure, tackling him. And well, if you didn't complain then or weren't that distressed then, why are you now? But I think one thing that's a personal viewpoint, just a personal theory. I think in a sense, Harry's perceived treatment, the way Meghan's been treated, has really propelled this and put it into warp speed. Whether he would have gone down this route or so fiercely down it, if it wasn't for that, I don't know. Yeah,
I'm interested as well to know how much information Harry will have been given before he gave his evidence. We know that he can't be tutored in his answers, but in terms of what you saw in court today as he was giving his evidence, did you feel he was quite polished in some of his answers? Because some of that cross-examination was tricky.
He was very calm and collected, certainly. I think that line of questioning, which is the forensic questioning, which is going to went on throughout the whole of today and will carry on tomorrow, is the sort of questioning which early on in the day it is much easier to deal with than when it's gone on for a really long time and you're suffering from realising that maybe your answers that you gave earlier might be causing you problems now. So I think we'll have to see how that develops tomorrow, but we certainly got a hint of that towards the end of today.
Yeah. Did he get as tough a time as perhaps you expected?
I think, knowing what's more important than me, I think people at the Mirror, among senior figures there, I thought they were, as I said, were surprised by how well he played, the fast bowling in the morning. But as the day went on, they felt that he wasn't actually, his bat was rather getting a few holes. But I think it's going to be interesting tomorrow morning, because I think Andrew Green will actually be bowling harder and faster at a few more bouncers. But what I found interesting was the application by Harry's legal team for an extra for 3 hours after Harry's finishing evidence to interrogate the Mirror's first journalist to step forward. And as we were saying last night and predicting last night, they kept coming back to this point. Harry kept saying it to the judge. I'm here being cross-examined. Where are the authors of these articles? You know, before you. Why aren't they being called?
That's interesting. But who's it down to? It's down to Harry to provide the evidence, isn't it?
Well, it's down to Harry to provide the evidence. And actually, it came up both ways today. At points, the Mirror Group's barrister said to him, well, you could have called these people about the leaks to discuss whether they were the sources for stories, etc. So that cuts both ways, I think.
Yeah,
Could
fascinating
they
stuff.
subpoena, though? Could they subpoena Mirror reporters? I thought it was the Mirror's job to actually decide who they were going to put forward.
It's the Mirror's job to decide who they would put up as witnesses for the
OK,
case.
we may find out more in coming days. Thank you both for the moment. Do stay with us. Coming up after the break, we're going to bring you the moment the lawyer cross-examining Harry accused him of total speculation in connection to this article.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us.
India's fatality rate is less than 2%, one of the lowest in the world. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of Northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Welcome back to this special programme, Harry in Court. Coming up, more of what the Duke of Sussex said under cross-examination as spoken by our actor. Now, Harry believes many of the stories written about him weren't in the public interest. They include This article, it's about when he broke his thumb. He was playing football at school, and Harry was asked by the Mirror Group's barrister, Andrew Green, if he thought the article's author, it was written by Jane Kerr, the then royal editor, had potentially hacked the phones of medical staff who had treated him.
I believe it was either probably herself or she got someone else to do the dirty work for her. Again, this story for any journalist would want to take it further due to pressure from their editors.
Well, Mr. Green followed with whose phone do you think was hacked for this article?
I can't be sure, my lord. I don't have the call data.
The barrister then pressed the Duke, saying that's not an answer, and asked the question again.
The doctors? I'm not sure. I can't be sure, Mr. Green.
Well, in a more heated exchange, Andrew Green asked Prince Harry if he thought a journalist hacked the doctor's phone number, adding, "Are we not in the realms of total speculation?"
No, I don't believe so. Again, I'm not the one who wrote the article. You'd have to ask the one who wrote the article.
Well, let's bring in our experts once again. Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck, and Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror and former deputy editor of the Daily Mirror as well. And here we are again, Persephone. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, who exactly had their phone hacked? Why can't you tell us who it was? And then he says, well, you'll have to ask the people involved. And also that line about other media outlets having printed this story as well.
That came up a lot today in this forensic line of questioning by the Mirror's barrister about, well, these allegations had already been published in another newspaper when this article that you're now complaining about was published. And Harry looked a little flummoxed by those sorts of questions.
I'm quite interested about stories from when Harry was at school, because there was that agreement, wasn't there, that the press would leave the boys alone during those school years?
Yes, there was, and it worked pretty well, although without doubt there were breaches of it, but it did work fairly well.
Something else that was interesting about that article is that it even mentions within it when William broke his arm a couple of years earlier and Charles complained to the Press Complaints Commission. So it's quite a weird situation where you've got an article that Harry is complaining about, even mentioning a previous complaint.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, Harry made a lot of points today about the fact that he admitted that a lot of this was just speculation as well. He said at points, and just reading off from what I scribbled down in court today, he said at points, I'm just speculating, and it could have been lifted from a voicemail, and admitted that it would have been incredibly risky to have hacked his phone or any of the other royals' phones.
But of course, he was also suggesting that it needn't be his phone that was hacked. It was that of associates, aides, advisors to the royal family, or members of of Prince Charles, as he was then, senior staff.
That was where the argument came back, which was, well, why aren't those people here in court? And so that's swung both ways today, didn't it? But...
It did. It's going to be very hard to. I wouldn't like to be predicting how this one is going to end. Actually,
no. Does this case crumble if we hear a lot more examples like this?
I think there's a real possibility that as the Mirror's barrister takes Harry through each of these articles, and he admits that he can't remember when he read them, if he read them, can't recall how or what distress was caused, that there could have been sources that were from, for example, other newspapers, repeat publications from other stories that had already been written, that the Mirror's barrister is able to draw that line of argument back round and say, really, this is just a case about general press intrusion that you're unhappy with, isn't it? And not just those 33 articles. And that's quite a sort of criminal law line of cross-examination, but I imagine that might be where tomorrow goes.
I mean, a broken thumb of a schoolboy playing football, even if it's a member of the royal family, isn't that big a story, is it? Well, what about the public interest defence here? Because that's something else that, that Harry has talked a lot about in his book, Spare.
I mean, the broken thumb is a trivial story. It's page 29 lead at best. But the issue is, how was it obtained? Now, I would be amazed if a random doctor who would know, who was treating Harry at A&E, if, and it's always important to say if that was illegally obtained, it's more likely to be a blagging case where somebody rang up and pretended to be a member of the royal household, just checking on Harry, some detail about Harry, and in fact, and somebody was naive enough to actually answer the question.
That came up in the evidence today, actually, that's the sort of material which might have been obtained by blagging. And of course, this, I'm just looking at the witness statement, which is headed in the matter of the Mirror newspaper's hacking litigation. But the blagging is certainly something which, on the articles which perhaps Harry fared better on today, seemed to be more along the lines of blagging than hacking.
Yeah, very interesting. And just briefly explain what blagging means for people who perhaps don't know.
Blagging is the obtaining of information unlawfully essentially by deception. Say posing as a member of Prince Harry's staff, ringing up, or the royal family staff, it's impersonation. This was what the Operation Motorman inquiry was all about, which although they haven't mentioned it by name, they keep coming back to this, in Harry's statement, saying that you've got to look at the same journalists who were condemned by the Information Commissioner in 2003. A lot of their names are on the articles that I am saying were illegally obtained. So, as we're saying, it's not in itself definite proof, but they're trying to imply, well, once a blagger, almost a blagger. That is the line they're taking.
It's quite a leap. I mean, there was a point at one of the questions today was by the barrister, the mere fact that someone has an interest in you doesn't necessarily mean that the information was obtained by unlawful information gathering. And Harry said it does when it's a group that have admitted to hacking already. But that's quite a jump.
It is. OK, thank you both for the moment. We'll keep bringing you the drama from the High Court, delivered by our actor for the rest of this programme. And for more analysis from today's event in court, you can scan the QR code, you can see it on your screen right now, and take a listen to the latest edition of the Sky News Daily podcast. Leah Belletto and our royal correspondent Laura Bundock take you through everything you need to know about the Duke's appearance in court with the media lawyer Jonathan Cohen. And you can subscribe to the Daily, of course, for free wherever you get your podcasts from. Now, after the break, we'll discuss what the Duke of Sussex had to say about Piers Morgan. And we'll speak to someone who was a victim of phone hacking. Don't go away. Hello again, welcome back to this special programme, Harry in Court. Coming up, more of what the Duke of Sussex said under cross-examination, as spoken by our actor. Still with me, Persephone Bridgman-Baker and Paul Connew. We'll be speaking to them again in a moment. But right now, I'm very pleased to say that joining me in the studio is Jackie Hames, a director of Hacked Off, who campaign for free and accountable press. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Also a victim of phone hacking, although you don't like the phrase necessarily victim, do you? But it'd be interesting to know what you thought of today's incredible events, really. Seeing and hearing Harry in the witness box, something that you've had to do.
Well, I didn't give evidence in a civil action. I wasn't in the position to be able to. Harry is probably one of the few people that has the financial clout and standing to be able to achieve that. I wasn't given that opportunity, but I did give evidence at part one of the Leveson inquiry. And I think watching that court proceedings today, it was so sad in many respects and so frustrating, because none of this needed to happen if we'd had part two of the Leveson inquiry. All these things would have come out. The questions that are being put to Harry today should have been put in 2000, when the conclusion of the criminal trials, which is when part two was scheduled to start. And all this would have been aired. We could have dealt with it, and Harry wouldn't have had to put himself through this.
Just remind us what happened to you.
Well, I was, it's in two parts, really. I was married to someone who's investigating a murder of a private investigator whose business partner was very close with the News of the World. The murder was notorious. It was involving police corruption. And we, as a result of my husband investigating that murder, we thought we were being targeted by suspects in that murder. We were being followed. We had interference in things like our mail. People were trying to intrude into bank accounts, moving things in our home, that sort of thing. And then one of the vans that was following us, this was back in 2002, was stopped, and it turned out actually the occupants following us were employed by the News of the World, which was completely left field. And by this time, we'd been put under the witness protection scheme. So all that was happening back in 2002. And then you fast forward to 2011, we find also that Glenn Mulcair, whose notebooks are now famous, of a sort of record of all the phone hacking that took place and blagging, also featured, certainly in my case, lots of personal information that must have come from my police personnel file, as well as information about my mobile phones. And in fact, the News of the World settled a phone hacking claim.
Yeah, and very distressing, especially when you first hear how your life has been infiltrated in that way. In Harry's case, the Mirror, of course, denies all but one of the charges that he's bringing. Investigative reporting, even if it's unpalatable sometimes, do you still believe it's important?
Absolutely, I do. I'm a great advocate. I think of all the wonderful journalists we've got in this country and the stories that they've uncovered and pursued, and relentlessly, and thank God for them. But we have and had a culture of criminality throughout the tabloid journalism. This is not about public interest. This is about abuse of power. This is about abusing people's liberty and private data in order to, raise money.
It's a difficult balance, though, isn't it? Because we do need a free press.
We do, absolutely. But that doesn't mean to say it shouldn't be accountable. And everybody who has huge power is accountable in this country. And a lot of the journalists, senior news editors, and in fact publishers are not holding our public politicians and royal family to account. They're holding them to ransom, and that's the wrong shift of power.
I suppose the problem is that many people will watch this case and see and hear what Harry has to say and say, this isn't actually about reform, it's about revenge.
Well, I can't answer for Harry. That's purely a matter for him. But clearly, he's put everything on the line here to actually bring this into the public domain, to actually almost replicate what should have happened and still should happen in Leveson Part 2. And the fact that David Cameron rode back on the very light touch regulation that was recommended by Lord Justice Leveson, and then Theresa May and Matt Hancock as the then Culture Secretary, not known for his integrity, actually lied to a select committee at the House of Commons about the fact that Lord Justice Leveson didn't want this Part 2 to go ahead when in fact he did. And that's the level at which they're being held to ransom rather than account.
Yeah, sadly we can't speak to them tonight. But just finally, Jackie, you know, when the phone hacking scandal first broke, the public, I think, understandably and rightfully, were pretty disgusted by it. All these years later, Harry sort of needs public opinion on his side. He needs the public behind him, doesn't he, if he wants to really change what goes on in the British press. Has he got that still, do you think? Do you think you still have that in your campaign?
Well, I think you have to look at it through the filter of the tabloid press and the people
Things
who...
have changed a lot, though, haven't they?
Well, I would dispute that in as much as we don't have a regulator which is independent. And until that stage where the public can have faith that the information they're being given is not being filtered through an agenda by a news editor or by an owner of a tabloid newspaper, which is why when you see the information flow from government to the public, it's being filtered through this skewed bias. And until we can trust what we read in our newspapers, this culture needs to be challenged because nobody else is challenging it. And it is really frightening to challenge tabloid newspapers. They are so powerful and nobody is holding them to account.
Jackie, we're out of time, but it's been great seeing you this evening. Thank you very much for coming in. Let's take a look now at a little bit more of the Duke's 50-page witness statement. Harry wasn't shy in naming those who he believes are responsible for the alleged intrusion against him, namely the Daily Mirror's former editor, Piers Morgan. This is what his statement said. Again, the thought of Piers Morgan and his band of journalists earwigging into my mother's private and sensitive messages in the same way as they have me, and then having given her a nightmare time 3 months prior to her death in Paris, makes me feel physically sick and even more determined to hold those responsible, including Mr Morgan, accountable for their vile and entirely unjustified behaviour. Well, this was Piers Morgan's reaction a little bit earlier this evening.
Evening, chaps.
Hello. What do you think of Harry's accusations today?
I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
He said your behaviour was vile and unjustified. What do you think?
I didn't see it. But I wish him luck with his privacy campaign. Look forward to reading it in his next book.
Piers Morgan speaking a little bit earlier. Paul, I'm sure you've got some reaction to both what Piers said and what Jackie had to say.
Yes. As far as Piers, I mean, we said last night that Piers' name was going to actually come up again and again and again today, as indeed it did. And Piers, I've rarely seen Piers so reticent, shall we say, not saying very much. But I suspect, apparently, he hasn't mentioned today's events on his programme tonight on a rival channel, which I suspect is probably on legal advice. Piers, of course, strongly denies that he ever hacked a phone or authorised hacking a phone, but undeniably, a lot of settlements were made have been made by the Mirror Group during the period when he was editor. Not all of them, because he left and others took over, but certainly a significant amount of those large payouts by the Mirror Group took place during his tenure, which of course Harry's legal team will be arguing, well, an editor should know. If you don't know, you ought to know.
Well, he of course denies all knowledge, doesn't he, of knowing about these various practices. We're going to leave it there for the moment. We'll chat again shortly. I just want to tell you about the legal team for the newspaper group that's been quizzing Harry on whether journalistic endeavour rather than illegal means could have been the source for stories. The lawyer cross-examining the Prince referred to this article, here it is, Beach Bum Harry from 2003. It's when the Prince was on holiday with friends in Australia. He said a piece by the Evening Standard had come out days before the article in the Mirror, and he put it to Harry that anyone who wanted pictures of him, he was staying in the resort of Noosa in Australia, just had to head there, surely.
Though I would argue is a bit of a needle in a haystack.
Andrew Green responded with the notion that many photographers were prepared to look for that needle in the haystack.
Yes. Again, am I right in saying the article is written by Jane Kerr?
Well, there the Duke is referring to the journalist Jane Kerr, and Andrew Green struggles to find if she is indeed the author. He rifles through his papers, and while he's doing that, Prince Harry jumps in.
So I think it would be much better to ask her than me. She'd be more in the know, I believe.
The lawyer then says, well, I'm here to cross-examine you. I'm afraid that's the way this works, Prince Harry.
I understand that.
Mr Green then asks Prince Harry if he recalled the efforts of a local journalist to track him down during his time on the Sunshine Coast.
Yes, and deeply disturbing that looking for me was regarded as a hunt. My lord, could I add that, again, based on my own experience and knowledge in a lot of these articles, and many since, a lot of false information was put in these articles to throw people like myself off the scent. I somewhat reject an article by a paparazzi or photo agency as proof of the story, because if I was that person, I would make up that story, some different story to how that hunt happened, as opposed to reality of it, to cover up the true unlawful means of that hunt. Based purely on my experience, my life, and what I read about my life, stories have been clouded, shrouded and concealed in lots of false information, which is why I wasn't aware I had a claim for so long.
It's being a bit naive in not quite understanding the lengths and efforts that tabloid hacks will go to get that front-page picture of him on the beach or whatever it might be.
Yes, I do. I mean, whether you like them or not, paparazzi are very resourceful. And they know, the likely places a celebrity or a member of the royal family might go for a quiet time. So they could actually just be determined to look everywhere. Also, Harry can't rule out that somebody who spotted him, even though it's a pretty remote area, it's not that remote, that that somebody might have spotted him there and actually
an
old-fashioned tip-off. In fact, as we all know, some of the tabloids, and it's not illegal, put out, if you've got a story, ring, the news desk on.
See it in papers today, don't we? I suppose it's all a part of this dance, isn't it, Persephone, between the press and the royal family. That they use the press and they need the media when they want them, but when they don't, things can go wrong for them. And of course, we saw it most famously with Diana.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and it was brought up actually in the evidence today when Harry said, of course, we did provide, for example, on holidays, we did provide photographs and interviews to the press at the start of the trip in the hope that then they would, leave us alone for the rest of it. And there were some quite emotive points he made on that today. There was also talking about the points you made just then. There's quite a lot of eye rolling in the journalism room as those sorts of points were being made actually during the evidence.
I mean, you've got a book out which sort of looks at exactly this point, doesn't it? That relationship between the media and the royalty.
Yeah, it's called reporting royalty. In fact, the timing is interesting because it looks at both the past, the present, and throwing forward the future of the relationship between the media and the monarchy, which they both need each other. But interestingly, it includes looking at Harry's case. But if, and it's a big if Harry were to have a resounding victory in this case, I said if, then it could have huge implications for both the royal family and the media and public trust. And in a way, it could make Leveson look like a vicarage tea party, if it went that way. I'm not saying it will.
Well, we don't know which way it's going to go yet. But we've just got a few seconds left. Persephone, you were in court today. Just sum up your thoughts in 20 seconds or so.
Forensic questioning by the Mirror Group's barrister, and I think he's going to put it all together tomorrow to try to seek to make this point that actually it's not these 33 articles which are the problem, it's the bigger picture.
Yeah, and we will hear more from Prince Harry tomorrow. Persephone, Paul, thank you both very much indeed. It's been great to get your analysis and your thoughts this evening. Well, there we have it. Prince Harry has given evidence in the witness box at the High Court in his case about allegations of unlawful information gathering against the Mirror Group newspapers. Now, we weren't able to play what happened in court firsthand, so this was our way of showing you, with the help of our actor. Thank you very much to our guests tonight. Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, former deputy editor of the Daily Mirror and a media commentator. Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck. Thank you to our guests and for you for watching. But that's not it. Tomorrow we'll have more from the Royal Courts of Justice when the Duke of Sussex takes to the stand once again. Good night.
This is Prince Harry arriving at the High Court.
He wants to be here. He wants this moment in court.
These articles were incredibly invasive, deeply disturbing that looking for me was regarded as a hunt.
How are you feeling, Harry?
Prince Harry departing the High Court in central London after his first day of evidence.